never mind the wisdom of drinking all day and going hunting. When after Mr. Griffin had told you that he wanted to drown Mr. Ray,
Yes, sir.
did it occur to you that maybe it wouldn't be a very good idea to go out in the woods with loaded firearms? Did you ever think about that?
No, sir, I really didn't.
Huh.
We are about to watch the 2020 commutation hearing for a man who was involved in this homicide that took place back in 1985. Now, it's interesting, his approach. After pleading guilty all those years ago, what he says at his commutation hearing. I'll review the appeal with you at the end.
Mr. Paul Tolbert Jr., your DOC number 111450. You're classified as a second felony offender, sentenced on October 10, 1985 to life for a second-degree murder conviction. Is that information correct, Mr. Paul?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wise.
Mr. Talbert, you were first initially, it was going to be first degree murder, and you pled guilty to the life. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Your co-defendant, Leonard Griffin, where's he at now?
He's deceased.
Okay. I just wanted that for the record. All right. I read this case over and over and over. The thing that you and Leonard had got together to plan a murder, is that correct?
No, sir.
All right. Well, tell us about it.
We had got together and went hunting. And while we was out there hunting, Griffin, Mr. Leonard Griffin shot Mr. Ray. And I helped him by driving him away and not going to tell it when it happened.
Was there some problems with you? What was the deal? It was your sister-in-law?
Sir?
What was the deal that you and Mr. Griffin had talked about this, and then y'all went and intercepted him and met him on the side of the road, and y'all drank some beers? I went over all the court proceedings and everything from the start of this case on down.
Yes, sir. We got in touch with him. He had was supposed to have been back early, and he didn't make it back. We thought maybe it broke down, and we had all the night before I had went and killed a deer, and we decided we'd go that night and kill another deer. And while we was out there deer hunting, Mr. Griffin shot him.
Why did he shoot him?
I don't know why he shot him.
Well, according to the records here, I see where you that you and him had talked about it. And y'all had a little problem with him.
No, sir. Other than going hunting, the only time we talked about it. At one time before, he had made a statement that we was over there, and he said he would carry him off. We would carry him off, and he would drown him.
Yeah, I read that in the statement.
Yeah.
When he went on one side of the vehicle, you was on the other side of the vehicle. You had a pistol, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
He was on the other side, and that's when he shot him.
No, sir. We had started back. We had went out in the woods. When we went in, we seen 3 deer. And when we drove around, thought maybe they had went through the woods there, back out in the field, and didn't see them over there. We come back around and walked out in these woods, didn't see them and then started back to the truck, and we were walking. I was a little bit ahead of them, and we were walking back up towards the truck, and I heard the gunshot and turned around. Mr. Ray was on the ground,
And then when the police come to you, what did you tell them? Did you tell them what happened?
yes, sir.
What did you tell them?
I told them we was out there deer hunting, and told them about us going check and see whether he had broke down. The reason he was running late, and we took and went. I told him about what he had told me, you know, about carrying him off and drowning him, and I told him it about him shooting him and everything. We was hunting.
Well, why was he wanting to drown him? What was the reason for that?
I don't know. He said that he couldn't swim, so he drowned him.
Mr. Talbot, I read the case back and forth. I read your statements on the court statements. I think it was a little different than that. Do you want to tell me exactly what happened?
We was out there deer hunting, and he shot him, and I helped by driving him away, and I can go and tell. I didn't know he was gonna shoot him. He had talked about carrying him off and drowning him. And
But why was the reason he was wanting to drown him?
I don't know why he was wanting to drown him.
All right. But all right. And one of the other things, did you and Mr. Lee ever have any problems?
Yes, sir. We
What
had just, sir.
What happened?
Me and him got in a fist fight over him stealing some guns from my daddy. My daddy was crippled, and he stole 3 Browning shotguns from my daddy, and I got mad at him and whooped him, and then it was over with.
All right. You know, I know you have a life sentence with some of the programs you've taken. I've looked at a lot of the programs you've taken, and and you've taken some good programs, and you've had 6 DB reports. But I don't think your story's adding up to exactly what you said during that, what all happened.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, that's what I remember.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Roche?
Good morning, Mr. Talbot. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
Okay. What is your current job at Louisiana State Penitentiary?
Working at the horse lot, repairing saddles.
How long have you held that job?
I've been on it about a year now.
Okay. Tell me what your transition plan will be if and when you're released.
To go out there and work and eventually open up me a saddle shop to rebuild saddles and make saddles.
And you've been incarcerated for about 18 years, is that correct?
36 years.
36 years?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I got to work on my mathematics. So basically, you've had 6 disciplinary write-ups in 36 years.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Mr. Marabella?
Mr. Talbert, I know it's not our job necessarily to go over the facts of the case, but I do have a couple of questions following up on what Mr. Wise had asked you. It sounds like your position is you really didn't have anything to do with the shooting. You just kind of drove around afterwards. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, sir.
Why did you plead guilty to second-degree murder?
Because I was looking at the death penalty. I was looking at the death penalty, and my lawyer told me I would come out better if I would plead guilty. And I would really, by my actions and helping him, driving him away and not going to tell the police, I was just as guilty as he was.
The programs that you've taken in prison, what are the ones that have stood out most to you, most helpful to you?
The 100 hours, substance abuse, and victim awareness.
All right. Were you drinking when this was going on, or were you doing drugs when this was going on?
No, sir, we was drinking.
How long had you been drinking that day?
I had been drinking all day.
All right, I think that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Good morning, Mr. Talbert.
Good morning.
Never mind the wisdom of drinking all day and going hunting. When after Mr. Griffin had told you that he wanted to drown Mr. Ray,
Yes, sir.
did it occur to you that maybe it wouldn't be a very good idea to go out in the woods with loaded firearms? Did you ever think about that?
No, sir, I really didn't.
Huh. Well, Mr. Marabella's question was a good one about why you pled to second-degree murder, because there's all sorts of things the DA could have charged you with, less than that, if you'd honestly cooperated with them and told the truth from the start. But the records we have indicate that that's not what you did, contrary to what you told us today. That at first you lied about it and tried to avoid responsibility. Were you worried at all after Mr. Griffin had killed somebody and that he might kill you?
Yes, sir.
What did you do about that?
That's the reason I left and went over into Mississippi. And then when my mother called me and told me about it, I come on back to Concordia Parish, and that's whenever the sheriff and all come there and arrested me.
Warden, what can you tell us about Mr. Tolbert?
Well, as y'all mentioned, he's had 6 write-ups since he's been here. He doesn't give us any trouble. He works on his job. He's pretty quiet.
Thank you, Warden. That's all the questions I have, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. So, Mr. Talbert, what was your relationship to Mr. Roy Lee Ray?
Brother-in-law.
So he was married to your sister?
Yes, ma'am.
And we talked about going hunting. So y'all were hunting at night, deer hunting at night?
Yes, ma'am.
which is against the law also, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you did it the night before also, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't, I don't have any other questions. I want to commend you on your excellent conduct record. 6 write-ups in over 35 years is quite remarkable. We don't see that often. I am concerned about your recollection of what happened that day, because as everybody here has indicated, what you're telling us certainly conflicts with the information and evidence that we have before us. But at this point, we'd like to hear from our victims, the representatives of the victim, and I'll ask if you would unmute your mic, and whoever goes first, just please introduce yourself and tell us your relationship to the victim.
Name's Carl Ray. He's my dad. And I got a picture of him and the grandmother. I don't know, it's kind of hard.
Sure.
I don't know. I ain't never got to meet my dad. I'm 44 years old. I never met him. This is the only thing I have of him. And it's, I don't know, I've been in a children's home all my life. And when I got out, I got to meet my mom, and, spend time with her and get to know who she was. But never got that opportunity. My dad, because of what they did to him, I never got to see his face. But on a picture at the funeral, when I walked to the casket, I was 9 years old. And so I never got the opportunity, to meet him and to spend time with him or get to know who he was or what, anything. And I think until my dad can come and give me a hug and a kiss, tell me he loves me, that he shouldn't be able to get out, whether he pulled the trigger or not. He was there. He knew about it. And I don't hate him, but I don't think he should get out. I just don't feel it's right, because I'll never get to see him. Like I said, it's the only thing in earth that I don't want to. I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry.
It's
Crying.
okay. Miss Elizabeth, would you like to say something?
I'm Elizabeth. I'm his wife.
Okay.
My kids never got to meet their grandfather. We know very little of Roy Lee Ray Sr. We've heard stories, and that's it. I mean, they took life. They could have just beat him up and left him on the side of the road, but they chose to take life. So I think since he chose to take life, he deserves to be where he's at. And that's all I got to say.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to spend with us this morning. Let me ask Mr. Talbert, is there something you'd like to say to us to wrap it up?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry for my actions whenever the crime took place. And I apologize to the victim family. I apologize to my family. I apologize to the community for my actions. And I am really sorry from my heart. I am. And I'm sorry that I wish I could change it, but I can't. And I hope y'all forgive me. And I really do. I thought the world of Roy Lee Ray. He was a good brother-in-law. Me and him had words and everything, but we got it took care of by a fist fight. And I'm deeply sorry. I really am.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Thank you, sir. I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Wise for your recommendation and vote.
Okay, at this time, I'm gonna vote to deny. Strong law enforcement opposition and victims opposition. I think there's some things here, Mr. Talbot, that you was unable to tell us today. I don't know why the reason you wouldn't about all of this, and a lot of things wasn't lining up. I think it would have been a little different with me if you would have just shot straight with me. Today, I vote to deny.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Roche?
Madam Chairman, my vote is the same as Mr. Wise.
Mr. Marabella?
My vote is likewise the same as Mr. Roche and Mr. Wise.
Mr. Jones?
My vote is the same. Mr. Tolbert, we don't require all that much about people that appear before us. And I know people's memories change over years, but not about everything. And we have evidence from when this happened and what you said then, which is so far different from what you tell us today. And it makes it hard for us to believe that you're ready to start your new life. So my vote is likewise to deny.
And for the same reasons that's been articulated by my colleagues, my vote today also is to deny your application for clemency. So today you've received a unanimous vote, Mr. Talbot, to deny your application. I want to thank Mr. Carl and Elizabeth Ray for joining us today. That concludes this proceeding.
Thank you, Sir Richard, for that. And man, I mean, like Keith Jones said, they don't expect much, but they want some type of the truth. And it's like it's the strangest thing. Now, this hearing happened in 2020, September of 2020, and the time of this recording, January 2025, he is still locked up. He is still in Angola at 75 years old. And we might see him this year because it's typically we see 5 years between commutation hearings. So there's a chance we'll see him. Make sure to check out the commutation playlist. But let's go in to the actual crime. I guess before we do, I'll take a step back and say, there's something just with the poor, the son talking about his dad, and it's just something very real and raw about that, with him kind of trembling as he's holding the picture, and the sadness of it and the reality of it. And then there's an opportunity for this man to at least have a heartfelt apology, and there's just nothing there in his apology. It's like I'm sorry for my actions, the crime that took place. I apologize to the victim's family, to my family, and I'm really sorry from the bottom of my heart, and I wish I could change it, but I can't. And it's like, do you just not have the ability and none of it makes sense. It's just none of it. But let's go. On the morning of June 4th, 1985, Roy Lee Ray was found lying face down in an agricultural field in an isolated area south of We have the appeal of this hearing, so we're going to read through the facts of what happened in the head. Again, on that note, how they were all talking about how ridiculous his excuse was for the hunting. It was just so bad. I mean, out of all the things he could have said, what he said was just ridiculous. And I like how even Ms. Renatza called him out on it. Like, it was night. You couldn't even be hunting at night. That's illegal. Yeah, okay. Like I'm sure they have the wildlife and whatever, looking out into middle of Bumbleville, Louisiana, to see who's hunting at them. But I don't think that was her point. I think she's just pointing out how ridiculous it is. I don't think people. I know. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but do people do deer hunting at night with shotguns? I don't know. Okay, I guess that's a good way to kill your buddy. Shell identified as a 12-gauge shotgun shell, Super X double-aught buck. The crime scene investigation revealed their tire tracks leading to the victim's body. The impression in the dirt revealed they were made by a vehicle with street tires on the front and back of the right side and mud grip tires in the front and back of the left side of the truck. Because of the unusual nature of these tread marks, the investigating officers determined they should attempt to locate a vehicle with similar tires. Always comes down to those unique tire marks, huh? A wallet was found in the victim's pocket, indicating that the victim's name was Roy Lee Ray. The investigating officers went to the victim's residence, reflected on his driver's license, and spoke with the victim's wife, Margaret Ray. She provided the officers with some information about who Roy Ray associated with Paul Tolbert was, including among Ray's associates. Pursuant to the information received by the officers regarding the suspect's truck, several police officers went to the residence of Paul Tolbert. A truck with tires similar to the tires which made the tracks found at the crime scene was found at Tolbert's residence. Because the tires on Paul's truck could have made the tracks found at the scene, the officers took Tolbert to the Concordia Parish Sheriff's Office Department. After a short period of interrogation, Tolbert got very emotional and said, "I didn't kill him, but I could tell you who did." Tolbert related to the officers that it's interesting that he became emotional, right? Officers that the defendant, Leonard Griffin, had shot and killed Roy Ray. Based upon the subsequent statements made by Tolbert concerning the specifics of the murder, Trooper Jim Morris prepared a search warrant affidavit and secured a search warrant for the residence of Leonard Griffin. Sheriff Fred Scott prepared affidavits and obtained arrest warrants for Paul Tolbert and Leonard Griffin. Tolbert later pled guilty to second-degree homicide. He was in the Tensas Parish Jail at the time of the trial, but did not testify. Tolbert later pled guilty. That's interesting. Wait a minute. Fred Scott prepared affidavits and obtained arrest warrants. Paul Tolbert and Leonard Griffin. Tolbert later pled guilty. He pled guilty to. I'm so confused, right? Why did he plead guilty? And now it's just weird. The whole thing's weird as to why he just didn't take responsibility at this hearing. I never get that. I mean, he could have just said what happened. On June 15, 1985, the defendant, Leonard Griffin, was arrested. Unless you're saying what happened, this is what... no, it doesn't make any sense. All right. On June 15, 1985, the defendant, Leonard Griffin, was arrested in Concordia Parish and charged with second-degree murder. He was advised of his constitutional rights and the fact that the search warrant for his residence had been obtained. Griffin also signed a consent to search of his home and residence. I don't know why my brain must be mush. I'm a little confused. The officers entered the defendant's residence and discovered an Ithaca 12-gauge shotgun. One of the items named in the search warrant is that a good brand, Ithaca? I'm not familiar. Based upon the information received by Paul Tolbert, the gun was not dusted for fingerprints as it had been recently oiled and rubbed down. Griffin was again advised of his rights to transport it to the Concordia Parish Sheriff's Department. Still seems like a mistake not to test it for fingerprints. But I guess they know what they're doing. There, he questioned by Jim McKenzie and Fred Scott. The defendant admitted ownership of the 12-gauge Ithaca shotgun, but denied any knowledge of the murder of Roy Ray. An expert who testified at trial established that the spent shell found at the crime scene was fired by this gun. On June 19th, the defendant was interrogated by Roger Joubert and Edward Thompson. He was fully informed of his constitutional rights, including his right to counsel. In the interrogation, the defendant admitted he was present when Roy Ray was murdered, but stated that Tolbert was the murderer. Okay, and you'd expect this, right? Now, the defendant related to the officers that Tolbert had come by his residence on June 14th and told him to get his shotgun and buckshot, stating that we are going to get one. Well, you don't use buckshot to kill a deer, right? That wouldn't work. Would it? I mean, even if it's a 12-gauge buckshot, I guess it would. Yeah. Okay. We are going to get one. Yeah, it would. What am I talking about? Okay. Griffin said that he thought, as you guys can clearly see, I don't hunt. I don't have anything against hunting. I don't know. I don't have it in me. Griffin said that he thought I just need to buy it off the commercial line. Griffin said that he thought that what Tolbert meant by the statement was that they were going to get the deer hunting. He stated that they picked up Ray, drove around, and drank beer. He stated that they drove out to the area where the homicide occurred, walked around looking for deer, went into the woods and hunted for a while, and returned to the truck when they did not see any deer. Griffin said Tolbert asked Ray if he had stopped in Baskin and seen that woman tonight, and that Ray stated that he had not. Griffin stated that Tolbert then said, "You lied to me your last time. I told you that if you lied to me again, I was going to lob your arse." And that Tolbert then shot Ray in the face with the shotgun. Dang. So what's he saying here? He's saying that they did go. Okay, so let's assume that this is something that you do. You drink some beer. You go hunt for deer with a shotgun. You're gonna kill it. I guess you'll have some good old barbecue. Maybe you put it on a spit, and then they fight. They fight, and so this wasn't premeditated. Is that possible? Griffin said that Tolbert asked Ray if he had stopped at Baskin to see the woman tonight, and that Ray stated that he had not. Griffin stated Tolbert then said, "You lied to me the last time. I told you if you lied to me again, I was gonna," and then he shot him in the face. Griffin stated that Tolbert then told Griffin to go home and wash the gun and keep his mouth shut. God dang it, man. On June 22nd, 1985, almost 40 years ago, Deputy Ed Thompson transported the defendant to Alexandria for the purpose of obtaining polygraph examination on the defendant. Buddy Kavanaugh stated a licensed polygraph examiner was to perform the test. The defendant was informed of his rights and that he did not have to take the test. He agreed to take it, and during Kavanaugh's explanation of the procedures, Griffin suddenly stopped him and stated that his conscience had been bothering him and that he wished to confess. I just don't. It's amazing to me. It's just amazing to me that, okay, I feel like this is like out of a classic old movie, what is it called? Like that Netflix show with. Okay, this interview was recorded on both audio and videotape. The tapes revealed that the defendant had been advised of his constitutional rights and waived them. The tapes were introduced as evidence and viewed by the jury. Essentially, the defendant said he and Tolbert knew they were going to kill Ray when. Okay, this is the confession now. All right, so this is the juice of it. This is the juice of it. And remember, the defendant here is not the man who we just saw. This is his co-defendant. The tapes revealed that the defendant had been advised of his constitutional. Essentially, the defendant said that he and Tolbert's the man whose hearing we just saw, knew they were going to kill Ray when they went to pick him up because a week before, at the home of Tolbert's mother, he and Tolbert planned how to murder Ray. In explaining the shooting of the victim, the defendant stated that he fired 3 shots at the victim. The first shot caused Ray to fall straight back, and the final 2 were fired straight down at Ray's face. He further stated that before leaving the scene, he and Tolbert picked up 2 of the spent shells and later threw them away. After returning to St. Joseph from Alexandria, the defendant was again advised of his rights and demonstrated to the sheriff, Scott, that he had executed the murder. At trial, the only witness called on behalf of the defense was the defendant, who testified. Defendant took the stand, but I guess what choice did he have? Who testified that his prior confessions were a lie, which he made up because he had been beaten and threatened by the officers. I agree. If this is your defense, you do have to take the stand here. His testimony at trial tracked the story contained in his June 19th statement to the officers that Tolbert had picked him up under the pretext of going deer hunting and that Tolbert had killed Ray. The jury returned a verdict of guilty as charged. The sentence delays were waived, and the mandatory sentence of life imprisonment without benefit of parole, probation, suspension, and sentence was imposed. So, just in a nutshell, what happened here was that his co-defendant just threw up his hand and said, "I don't even want a trial. I'm pleading guilty." His co-defendant, he confesses to the crime, then goes to trial, and doesn't and claims at trial that I guess it was his co-defendant that shot him. He only confessed because he was beaten up. The state doesn't even bring his co-defendant to testify against him. And probably because he just pled guilty and took the charge. They didn't even need to make a deal with him. It does seem like two extremely low IQ men murdering someone, because they could have simply killed him and said that there were three of them were drinking and hunting, or not even drinking. They just went hunting and they killed him. That's what happens when you hunt at night with shot, They could have just said that and they would have gotten. They didn't even have to do this whole thing. I mean, if you really want to kill them, just say, "Hey, we're going hunting at night," and whoops. They're just not that bright, obviously. Yeah, I mean, there's different things in his appeal, attorney, this and that. I mean, I'll put the link to this in the description. It seems that he asked for, "Did you ever indicate that you wanted an attorney?" "Yes, sir." I said, "I'd get me one." "Did you ever get one?" "No." "Why not?" "I didn't had no chance. I couldn't see nobody or talk to nobody to tell him about an errand." I mean, you can see how this went down. Oh man. A defendant became upset during interrogation by a state trooper attempting to escape, and upon being captured by two deputies stated to them, I'm going to tell an attorney what the trooper told me." The deputies both testified that the defendant did not request an attorney, but rather that he merely stated that he was going to tell an attorney that the trooper had threatened him. The court found no error in the trial court determination that the defendant's statement did not amount to the express. What's funny is I actually do believe that he wanted an attorney, and I do believe that they might have been roughing him up a little bit, because why would I not believe that to be a possibility? This is in the middle of Bumbleville, Louisiana in the late 1980s. The appeal was in 1990, but 1985, yeah. He probably was roughed up. Who knows, man? Who knows what happened, huh? Whew. Scary time to be in a small town. I mean, I don't doubt that he didn't kill him, but it does seem sketchy. The defendant gave two admissible confessions on June 22nd, which were proven at trial. The defendant made an attempt to establish that the confessions were given to him because of fear created by having been beaten by the officers on June 15th. All the officers stated that the defendant had not been mistreated. Sure, I mean, of course they would say that. And that the court confession to have been voluntary. The evidence supports the trial judge rejection of the defendant's testimony. The defendant gave one confession in Alexandria, Louisiana, about noon on June 22nd. Maintained his innocence until this confession was given. He was carried to Alexandria for the purpose of submitting to a polygraph test. Before the test was given, the defendant announced to the polygraph examiner that his conscience was bothering him and he wanted to make a confession. I still don't believe any. I hope I'm not digressing too much. He probably is guilty of murdering him, but like the whole process of the confession seems super sketchy. Defendant, the polygraph examiner, if his conscience was bothering him and wanted to make a confession of the crime, the confession was placed on a videotape. The tape reflects the clarity of the attitude of the defendant about the crime and his desire to escape the mental burden of his guilt. I would love to see that video. Upon the defendant's return to Kansas Parish In the late afternoon of June 22nd, he began confessing to killing the victim. His oral confession was related to the sheriff. The defendant showed Scott, and he performed the murder. The jury viewed the video tape of the defendant Alexandria confession. We viewed this tape and know to the jury certainly impressed by the sincerity of the defendant in desiring to give his confession and the defendant's declaration following the confession that he felt better. The video reflected that the defendant was treated very nice by the interrogator, who explained in detail that the defendant's rights had been made certain that the defendant understood and waived them. The confession was complete in detail, and the jury could understand by the planning of the murder that the defendant and Tolbert, the jury could understand the actual execution of the murder by the defendant. Did they kill him because he was seeing other women and it was his brother-in-law? Is that why he did it? Because I'm still not clear on the reason why. Maybe that was why. He didn't like how he was treating his sister. Anyways. I think the moral of the story is don't kill a man in Bumbleville, Louisiana, because just don't kill a man. How about that, right? Don't go deer hunting at night, as Mr. Natsa pointed out, because that's illegal. Or was it, who said it? Was it Jim Wise who said, or was it Keith Jones? He said, don't go drinking. One of them, maybe it was Marabella, and then go hunting. That's also probably something you don't want to do. A lot of things you don't want to do. Anyways, there you have it. If we do see him this year, we'll play it in the return of playlist. That's a playlist that we have for when someone comes back for a second hearing. Maybe it's a second commutation hearing. Maybe it's a revocation hearing after being paroled. So check out that playlist, and that's where it will end up. And with that, I'll let you go.
Never mind the wisdom of drinking all day and going hunting. When after Mr. Griffin had told you that he wanted to drown Mr. Ray,
Yes, sir.
did it occur to you that maybe it wouldn't be a very good idea to go out in the woods with loaded firearms? Did you ever think about that?
No, sir, I really didn't.
Huh.